conference. He was really the heart and soul of this from the very beginning. He's worked relentlessly for months now to make this happen. So this was largely authored by Teji with input from Dhananjay and myself. So these are the conference conclusions. The past 30 years since the 1992 summit, Earth Summit in Rio, have seen remarkable advances in science and technology. For example, innovations in remote sensing technology have enabled us to understand detailed glacier functions and glacial lake development processes that were previously unidentifiable. Even smartphones, which few could have imagined just 30 years ago, have become useful information gathering tools. For example, the last 6 months I was out in the Kanchenjunga region. Even I used a smartphone, my iPhone, for satellite messaging, GPS, photography, video, and many other uses. We can look forward to further understanding of the mountains in the future with help from the continued development of science and technology. On the other hand, we've also learned over the past 30 years that advances in natural sciences, physical sciences alone, cannot solve the various problems of the mountains. Rather, it has become clear that a combination of both natural and social sciences is critical to the fullest understanding of mountain problems, prospective solutions, and sustainable mountain development. Thus, a strengthened scientific basis through the accumulation of data from both the natural and social sciences is essential to the best understanding of the mountains. At the same time, we've also successfully deepened our understanding of mountain nature and mountain people through respect for spiritual culture in the mountains, respect for the diverse values of mountain people in the mountains, and the act of climbing mountains itself. We had a wonderful presentation by Hirotaka Takigucha, very inspiring. We had a wonderful presentation just now from the good doctor that is an illustration of this. This is another important perspective that we should not neglect when considering the sustainable development of mountain regions. Partnerships between developing and developed countries have never been stronger, and multilateral efforts have flourished in mountain conservation and development. Through networking and the development of communication tools, such as the internet and Zoom, nature conservation has been promoted and mountain issues have been resolved, or at least improved in many perspectives. Progress in education. Now these are themes, interestingly, that we've all talked about in the last 3 days. Education is another one. Progress in education in Nepal and other developing countries has also been extremely significant in solving mountain issues. And this situation will be strengthened in the next decades. Investment in education is the most fundamental value that developing countries can take responsibility for. We still need to make more concerted efforts to ensure the sustainable mountain development of the world is passed on to the next generation. That's you. That's primarily you, because most of the people here were young, which is really fantastic. We'll come back to that in a moment. Now, 30 years after the Mountain Agenda, and 20 years after the International Year of the Mountains, some of the leaders of that time, such as Bruno Messerly and Larry Hamilton and others, have passed away. They've left. Also, Jack Ives and Professor Pitamber, who were to be the keynote speakers here, were not in sound health and were unable to fulfill our dream of having them sit here with us. And Jack Ives, you may not know, he was my advisor in graduate school. He was Teji Watanabe's advisor as well. Now, thanks to them, there have been many advances in the mountain partnership that has grown exponentially since their time to promote things such as the Mountain Agenda, the Mountain Forum, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, International Mountain Day, International Year of Sustainable Mountain Development, even Izimod. Izimod is a product of the mountain agenda in many ways that began some 30, 40 years ago. Further, we could not be happier to see so many young people presenting the results of their research during the conference. Today's youth, and that's you, and their involvement in the mountain agenda will be critical to the future of sustainable mountain development. In fact, here's some good news. There are more young people today involved in mountain studies as scholars, field practitioners, and technicians than ever before. Okay, I look out at you and I think about your presentations over the last 3 days, and it's really phenomenal. We have never had so many people involved in the topic of mountains or sustainable mountain development. Another example, last spring the mountain geographer Fausto Sarmiento asked me to write a chapter for his new book on montology. Montology, of course, is just the study of mountains. It was a term coined, 20, 30 years ago that's never really caught on. But he asked me to write a paper on historical and contemporary contributions of the climber scientist to mountain geography. And this is something that's always interested me because from the beginning of the golden age of mountaineering, about 1890 to, about 1900, all the way up to 1970, scientists were always a part of mountaineering expeditions. Every single expedition from Annapurna to Everest to Lhotse, wherever in the world, had a scientific component. So that developed a breed of men, mostly men, okay, because of the times, that I call the climber scientist. Okay, they were world-class climbers, but they were also scientists. And this continued until about 1970, when advances in mountaineering equipment, but also changes in the attitude of mountaineering. People wanted to get away from the big military-type expedition, and they went to smaller alpine-style expeditions. Science began to take a backseat. And ever since then, most climbing expeditions do no longer have a scientific component. There are exceptions, of course. So I thought, well, that's pretty depressing. But in my research, what I found was in tracing the climber scientists from de Saussure to Herzog to Hillary's group all the way up, I found that there are in fact more climber scientists today, more young people combining mountaineering with science than at any time in the past. And the second thing I discovered is that there are more women than any time in the past combining the skills of the mountaineer and the scientist. For example, today we heard from Uliana Horodevsky, the glaciologist. John All is another one. David Brashear, scientist, climber. Constancia Cerruti in Chile is a high-altitude archaeologist and a technical climber. So this is really very good news. Now, I think that you're all doing a really wonderful job. I think it's a very exciting time to be involved in mountains and mountain development and conservation. And I predict that you're going to have many successes. But as you've also learned during this conference, you have many challenges, okay? Just look down the valley, look at the air, look at the water. Many, many challenges to confront, and you're going to have inevitably some failures. But the main thing to keep in mind is that you are never, to quote President Obama, you are not defined by your failures. Rather, they are learning tools that you build upon throughout your mountain careers to one success after another. So, on behalf of all the participants in the conference, we, the three conveners of the conference, would like to declare that we, by making greater efforts than ever to cooperate with researchers, policymakers, NGOs, communities, and other stakeholders from all fields, will continue to address the unsolved problems of mountain regions and the unknown challenges that will arise in the future together. And with that, I'd like to say on behalf of Dr. Rigby and Teju Watanabe and myself, thank you very much.